Good evening. This is Karen with Karen's Cards and More, and we're going to work on tonight's Stamp and Share project. And for tonight's project, let me try to get my echo out. Okay, so tonight's project is this pencil case. When I started this project, I had in mind back to school, knowing that this was going to be for September and we were featuring the Love of Leaves stamp set. So this came to mind for a back to school project, and I know the kids have probably been back to school for a couple of weeks, but I thought this would be a fun project for the beginning of the school year. So let's talk about what we're going to use. Again, we're going to be featuring the Love of Leaves stamp set. And also the Stitched Leaves die set. We're going to use a couple of those, the coordinating die set. And I'm going to be using Soft Sea Foam green ink and Garden Green ink, as well as this green twine, baker's twine. We will be using some black Lamino. And then for the project itself, I just realized I had the wrong color of green for my piece that I had already cut out. So I'm going to go ahead and get another piece and we'll cut it together. We're going to be using Garden Green and Soft Sea Foam. I don't know why that's such a mouthful for me tonight, but that's what we're going to be using. So let's go ahead and cut the pieces that we need. We're going to start with a piece of the Garden Green, and this needs to be 4 1/4. So I'm going to try to go down here, 4 1/4. I'm going to cut the long side first just because to make sure. So we're going to do 4 5/8 for the long side. And then the short side is going to be 4 1/4. Line that up, and then we're going to be doing some scoring together. But you're going to need a piece of Soft Sea Foam green that is 4 by 2 1/2. So this is 4 by 2 1/2, and then we're going to need some scraps, and we'll talk more about the scraps. There's one other die set that you will need. And that is the Tasteful Labels die set. We're going to be using these 2 circles. There's 2 different size circles in here, and we're going to be using those. Okay? So let's do our scoring. So on the short side of your Garden Green, which is your 4 1/4 side, we want to score it at a 1/2 inch. Now, depending on how you're putting this in there, since I'm putting it in there this way, I would go to 1/2 inch. If you're going from this side, you would just go across here to 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'm just going to put this in here at 1/2 inch. Make sure that you use the gray. Let me scoot this up so that it's more on the camera. Okay, let me make sure, since I moved it, that I have it on 1/2 inch. And we're going to score it at 1/2 inch. And then we need to score it 7/8. And then we need to score at 2 3/8. And then we need to score at 2 3/4. And then on the long side, we want to score at 3/8 of an inch. Okay, that's got our scoring done. So let's go ahead and work with this since we have it out. I'm going to bring in my bone folder and we're just going to burnish the folds. So I'm just going to fold these in and I'm just going to go over them with the bone folder to give them a good crease. This box really comes together pretty easy. And then we're going to go over here and do the same thing. I'm trying to find my other fold. We got one more fold. Okay. Now so our box is going to form, you can put these together. This is how our box is going to form, okay? So what we want to do is on the end with the thin, where we just scored the one side of the long side, we want to cut along those fold lines of the little squares. And you want to do each of those. And then, so if you can imagine what this is going to be. So we're going to be folding this in like this. And so it's going to be like that. Okay, so we don't need this piece here, this end piece. So we're going to go ahead and cut that off. Just like that. Now, these, one of these is going to be what you're gonna see. And the other one is going to be the one that's tucked underneath, if that makes sense. So you don't want to miter this outside. And the reason I'm going through this is in case you want to ever make your own box, a different size box, you'll know the process, okay? So what I'm going to do, you could either miter these little small ones or you could miter this one end one. We're just going to miter the little ones and we're just going to miter them a little bit. That just helps the box go together a little bit smoother without so much bulk. So I'm just going to give this a little miter. And that's just going to help us when we go to put it together, okay? I'm going to miter this one just a little bit more. Okay, our box is ready to put together. So let's get the rest of our components together and then we'll be able to put everything together. So let's go to our piece of seafoam and we're going to work on this as all one piece, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to cut it in half. So we're going to do all of our stamping, then we're going to cut it in half, And that will give us our 2 panels for the front and the back. Now you could use Designer Series paper for this if you didn't want to make your own, but I thought it would be fun since we're featuring this stamp set this month to go ahead and make our own. So that's why we're just going to use the stamps and do it that way. So I'm going to come in with my Garden Green and my Seafoam Green. And I'm going to put some foam underneath since I'm working with polymer. And I just have a piece of scrap here so that I can go off the edge. And I'm using this leaf for the Garden Green. And I'm using this small one here for the Seafoam. So I'm going to try to get these where I can just keep stamping. So I'm going to start with the Garden Green. And I'm just going to stamp these all over this sheet. And I'm just going to turn my stamp so we have it different. All the leaves aren't going the same way. Like that. I'm going to go ahead and fill in with some of the Seafoam Green, and then we can always go back and add as we need to. Just like that. Really a pretty simple project to put together, but yet a neat way to kind of do something special for your kid, your grandkid, your niece, your nephew, your neighbor, child. That doesn't take a whole lot to do, but can say, hope you have a great school year. Okay, so it's that simple. We've got all of this stamped. You could do as much as you want or as little as you want. It's really up to you. I'm going to set this out of the way. I'm going to bring in a scrap of Whisper White and Black Memento. And I'm just going to stamp in this Love of Leaves stamp set. There's a little hello. And I'm just going to stamp this, and then we're going to use the die cut to cut it out. And I don't like the way that's stamped, so I'm just going to turn it over and stamp it again. There, I like that better. Okay, so now we're going to do some more cutting and some die cutting. So let me move some of this out of the way. I can move this out of the way. I can move this out of the way. And I'm going to bring my cutter back in. And the piece that we just stamped, the green piece, we want to cut this at 1 1/4, which is going to be on the short side, and that's basically cutting this piece in half. So 1 1/4. So that's going to give you 2 pieces that are 4 by 1 1/4. Okay. So there you've got your panels. Now I'm going to bring in my die cut machine. And I'm going to be using, remember I talked about the 2 circles that we are going to need. One of them is going to be the white circle that we just stamped the hello. The larger circle is just going to be out of soft suede. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that one first. So I'll just put that on there and we'll run that through. pretty easy. So we've got that. And then we'll go ahead and run our white piece through. And we're just going to put the circle around the hello. And we're going to run that through. Okay. And then we need a scrap of the garden green and a scrap of the seafoam green. So let's start with the seafoam green. And we're going to cut, and if you've been following me for the month of September for our Stampin' Shares, you know that I've used these dies before and talked about how to use them. So we're going to be using the matching die to the stamp that we used, and we're using both pieces so that we can get the stitched look on our leaf. If you don't put the centerpiece in, you won't have that stitched looking down the middle of the die cut leaf, and I wanted the stitched looking. So I'm using both pieces. I'm going to run this through. You'll get a better idea of that when I take this out. If you haven't seen this die before, this will give you a better idea of what the die does when you use them together. So you can see that it does the stitching down the center of the leaf. That's what happens when you use both pieces together. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And then I want to use the garden green. And I'm going to do the die that matched the stamp that we did, which is this one. You can tell that this is just a scrap that I've used repeatedly to work with these leaves. I'm just going to put that in there. I'm going to run this through. We're done with that machine, so I can move that. And there we go. We have this leaf that again has the stitching down the middle of it. So it gives it a real neat effect for your, hopefully you can see that in the camera, see the stitching on the leaf. Okay, so let me move some of this out of the way. And then we're ready to start putting things together. So the first thing that we're going to do is with our box that we have, remember these folds and slits here are at the bottom. So when you put whether you're using designer series paper or whether you're using the stamped paper that we did, you want to remember that this goes to the bottom. So if you want your paper to go a certain direction, keep that in mind that this is the bottom. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to attach these pieces. So I'm just going to bring in my liquid glue. And I'm going to get my silicone mat so I don't make a mess on my surface. Going to put some glue. Just like this. And then I'm going to center that on that piece. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other piece. Again, I'm going to center this on here, just trying to line them up at the bottom. Okay. Then we're going to come in with we're going to go ahead and put our tag together. And I'm just going to put some of the liquid glue on the back of the white piece. What's nice is working with circles, you don't have to worry about getting the sentiment straight because you can always turn the circle, right? So that's a nice thing about circles. So we're just going to put that together and let that dry for a minute. And then we're going to be attaching the leaves on the back of this. So let's go ahead and put the box together now. For this, I would recommend that you either use the liquid glue or you can use tear and tape. You want something that's going to be sturdy and hold this, since it's a box and it's going to hold the pencils. So you could do either one. You could do the tear and tape or the liquid glue. I'm just going to go ahead and use the liquid glue since I have it here. So this is how the box is going to go. I think on this side I'm going to use the tear and tape. So let's start with the side. And I'm going to put a piece of the tear and tape along the side, and I'm going to be putting it closer to the outside edge than the inside edge, if that makes sense. I don't want it right at the edge, but I do want it closer. I don't want it to run off the edge, but I do want it closer to the outside than the inside. And then we're just going to rub that down, just like that. And then I'm going to bring in my Take Your Pick tool to try to use that to get started, to pull that off. And then we're just going to fold that, and you just want to line up the outside edge of this piece to the fold that you have over here. So I'm just going to line that up so that my box is square. Okay? Then we're going to work with the bottom, and I think this is much easier to use the glue than to use the tear and tape. I just think it's easier. It does mean you have to hold it for a moment, but I just find it to be easier. Now, you can do it either way. You can put the tabs in first, then fold one in and then the other. Or you can fold one down, fold your tabs over, and then fold the top on like that. Either way, I like putting the tabs at the bottom and then having 2 layers of the long pieces, but you can do it either way. So I'm just going to put a little bit of the liquid glue on the little tabs. And then I'm going to fold my first one in. And what you can do is take one of the pencils and just run it down on the inside to press that in so that the glue holds up against it, and just keep your finger up against it and just press that in. That's the way I did mine. I just used the end of the pencil. And then I'm going to put some liquid glue on the back of this. And I'm just going to hold that for a moment. just to give the glue a chance to bond. Okay. Now with the tag, I have a real small, I think this is, trying to think, I think it's a 1/4 inch hole punch. It's a small circle, and I'm just at the top of the soft suede piece. I'm just going to put a little hole, and I want to kind of center it. I'm trying to make sure I can do this so you can see what I'm doing, but I can still get it centered and get it, hopefully I got it on here good. I'm just going to punch that. That's going to give us a way to attach our tag. And what I like to do is go ahead and attach the tag and then put my leaves on because it's easier to work with. So I'm going to bring in my green twine. And I'm just going to stick this through from the front to the back. Like that. And I'm just going to put it on the front here, and I'm just going to wrap it around. And you can wrap it as many times as you like. Just to give it that wrapped look. I think I'm going to wrap mine one more time. And I'm just going to cut this and give myself plenty of room to tie with, because I can always trim it. And then I'm just going to tie a bow. And then you can always manipulate your tag where you want it. And I want to get the bow over the tag. So I'm going to even run, the long piece back through the tag to help hold it now that I've got it in place where I want it. I don't like the way that looks, so we're going to do something different. I find that I put these on a different way every time. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it around our box first. I'm going to try to even these up a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a knot in this to hold the twine where I want it. Okay. And I'm going to bring in my tag and run this through. going to do another knot to hold it on there. And then I'm just going to do a bow. And I'm going to work with my loops. You can just pull them smaller and just keep working with them till you get them the size you want them. And I think that's about the size I want it. And then you can always turn them and get them where you want them. Leg, or the, I don't know what you call them. They're not legs, but I want the tails. I guess that's what you call them, tails. Hanging down the bottom. Okay, so just like that. So I'm just going to bring in my scissors and I'm going to trim these. And then I'm going to come in with my leaves that we die cut, and I'm going to use some of the mini glue dots. So I'm just going to put a mini glue dot on the front of the larger leaf, right at the base where the stem is. And then I'm going to just put the smaller leaf right on top of it. Just kind of at an angle, just like that. And then I'm going to put another, and I'm going to do two right at the base of that. And I'll show you that as soon as I get the mini glue dots on there. So I put one here and one here on the front of my leaves, and then that is what I'm going to use to tuck on the back of my sentiment layer. So I'm just going to place it where I want it and then press my tag down on it, and that's going to make it stick to the back of my tag. Now, if you don't like your tag flopping, you can use a mini glue dot to station that. You could just put a mini glue dot on the back of this and then attach it down to the front. I don't mind it flopping. I like it flopping. You could do it whichever way you want to do it. And this will hold 5 pencils. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in my pencils. Now you could take cellophane, like a cellophane bag, and put around this and wrap it that way. I liked it without the cellophane, just a little box like that. So feel free to add your own personal touches to it. But here's the one we did together tonight. Here's the one that I had done before. I hope that you, if you didn't work with me as I was crafting tonight, that you'll give it a try. Just a cute little project, a neat little project. Next week will be October, if you can believe it, and so we'll be featuring the Celebrate Sunflower set. So be sure to check out my Facebook page, Facebook group, and you'll see the pictures of the projects that are set for the month of October. I'm glad you've joined me tonight, and I'll look forward to crafting again with you soon.